Welcome to Beyond the Range podcast, boosting Wyoming's economy. We're traveling to all corners of the Equality State, talking with thought leaders about how Wyomingites navigate new paths towards economic diversification. The Beyond the Range podcast is brought to you by the Wyoming Truth. Established in 2021, the Wyoming Truth is a nonpartisan, nonprofit news operation dedicated to helping the community and fighting for the rights of local citizens. And YourGuides.io, a Wyoming-based blockchain startup transforming travel experiences for remote workers and digital nomads. Founded in 2021, YourGuides.io is a crowdsourced travel intelligence platform honoring great adventures and great adventurers. I'm your host, Marco Rubel, a lifelong resident of Wyoming, a father, entrepreneur, and artist. So now, let's go beyond the range. Today, we're with Amber Pollock. She is the owner, founder of Backwards Distilling. City council person, Casper, Wyoming. 20 minutes to change the course of Wyoming.
All right.
Who are you? Go.
I'm Amber. I am a resident of Casper, Wyoming. Was born in Casper, Wyoming. Took a sort of a curvy path to get to running a business in Casper, Wyoming, but that's where I'm at today is running Backwards Distilling. We've been here for about 10 years now, almost. I have my fingers in quite a number of things. City council, so, some of our variety of boards and commissions and things like that, I get to participate in. So I do a little bit of a lot of things here, and that's been really a result of starting a business here, wanting to be proactive in my community, and just sort of letting that path take me further and further into involvement in Casper.
Yeah, well, cool. So currently we're on your path. Where are we sitting right now? Where are we?
Yeah, we're in our downtown tasting room. So when we started Backwards Distilling in 2014, we have a manufacturing location in Mills, Wyoming, which is adjacent community here to Casper, and kind of an industrial area. We had our tasting room out there originally when we opened, and after about 5 years operating there, we moved to this downtown location, expanded our tasting room footprint, and opened down here 2019, about 10 months before the pandemic shut us down. So,
pandemic was such a great time.
Yeah.
So an entrepreneur and a founder and a very successful company in the land of high altitudes and low multitudes, straight in the center of the state, in Casper.
Right. Yep.
What was your aha moment? There's always a founder with a good story. I started this because, or this happened.
Yeah. We have one of those stories. So I run this company with my family. My mom, my dad, and my brother, we all co-founded it together. And so that's actually where the aha moment, the light bulb, happened. I had just gotten out of college. My brother had recently gotten out of college as well. I was teaching. I went to school to be a music educator. I got a bachelor's and master's in music ed. That's why I say I took a little bit of a curvy road to get here. It's not, directly related necessarily, but I was back from school teaching here in the district, and my brother had recently graduated from Wyotech doing basically car fabrication, and we were sitting around the dinner table, and it was sort of that moment where, as young adults, we were all back under the same roof again for the first time. After a while, we had yet to find our own places and all of that stuff. So it was kind of that funny time that I think a lot of families have, where it's you got your adult children living back with you, getting ready to go off and start various career paths and whatnot. And we were really close, and we like to eat dinner a lot together, and we love to travel together, big foodies, and into entertainment and circus, and hence the circus theme, which is a whole, side story that folks can probably find a lot of information about online. Won't go into that, but we were sitting around the table and talking about spirits. My brother specifically was talking about absinthe, and I bought him a bottle of absinthe when he turned 21, and he fell in love with it and started collecting it. And at the time, there were just not a lot of domestically produced absinthes, and my mom said, "Well, why don't you make some?" And that was sort of the aha moment where we thought, can you? Is that something that people do? And started doing some research and found that indeed, small scale spirits production was starting to crop up around the country, following a similar trajectory to craft beer. But that had started a couple decades earlier. Mm-hmm. So when we were looking, it was still quite a new industry. There were only less than 300 distilleries in the country at that time, and now we've got probably close to 3,000, I would imagine. So, it was kind of sent us down that rabbit hole of can this be done? Can it be done here? Let's see, and let's dig into it. And we decided that yes, in fact, it could be. Yes, it was something that we could all get excited about, and something that we wanted to see in our own community. So we didn't always have to travel. We wanted to be part of building that food and beverage scene here in town. So
yeah. So we're in your tasting room.
Yep.
Is there a name for your tasting room? Is it special?
It's just the Backwards Distilling Tasting Room.
Backwards Distilling Tasting Room. Yeah. Well, I dig the tiki theme.
Yeah. That's a pop-up. So this is an overlay. It doesn't always look like this, but we do a lot of different special events. And so twice a year we do this tropical overlay for a little staycation sort of vibe for folks here. So
yeah. Sweet.
Yeah.
It's a long and winding road. 2014.
Yeah.
This all started to coalesce, right? As you started to build this brand, this company. You live in Wyoming. What are some of the opportunities that you can find, an entrepreneur can find in Wyoming, specific?
Yeah. So I came to find out as we started to go down this road that there's a lot of open space. I don't just mean that sort of literally there is, but in the business landscape, in sort of if you want to chart a course here, I think that the space and the opportunity is there for you to do it. I've always said there are a lot of driver's seats here. I feel like, and that became apparent to me when I was not very old when we did this, and it was sort of oh, you're doing it, great. Not only do we want you to do that, but we want your input and your leadership on this board or on this this group, or we want to hear about this thing. And it became clear quickly that there was sort of a hunger and a desire to get folks who were doing something new or interesting and kind of push some of that stuff forward. And so I felt in that way, the opportunity was wide open for us to pursue, to bring this idea to fruition and get going with it. I think that there are resources to some extent here. There are some established groups that are eager to help, which you've got the Business Council and you've got Small Business Development and all of those, entities that, I think most places have. I think a difference here is that they're relatively accessible. You can just call them. They're not dealing with so many potential clients that they've, got their plates too full to give you a call back or whatever. I think they're pretty enthusiastic whenever there's a founder who has an idea who wants to pursue it. So we found that early on a lot of at least sort of that initial sort of stated support. Let's help you do this. Yeah.
So pretty easy to mesh into the community, build a community around your brand, and then integrate into Natrona County, into Casper, and then ultimately into the state. And the resources out there were sort of game level up resources out there, as long as you had the initiative and you are willing to, as an entrepreneur, you take the risk, right? Especially in the beginning. But as you move forward, you de-risk your idea and you move through. And there was access to knowledge and there was access to capital. I think I'll say that, and then when you ask me about
challenges that we've had. I'll say more about that, but I think there's two sides to that coin that I found here. But I would say, generally speaking, like that infrastructure exists. Those agencies are there. Their enthusiasm and passion for growing Wyoming companies is very strong, and Wyoming residents, their enthusiasm and passion for supporting Wyoming businesses is very strong as well, I think. So there's a lot of pride in that. And so that is a really important factor, I think, to sort of propel you to take that next step.
Yeah, definitely. So you grew up in Casper.
Yeah.
Just for a minute or two, like talk about like the difference, like how has Casper changed in your eyes from then till now?
Yeah, I think Casper looks like fundamentally different than it did when I was growing up here. And we hear that too from folks. We get a lot of folks who have come back to visit family or whatever. They've been away for even 5 to 7 years, I think. They've been away, they come back, and they believe that it looks really different. And I think that a lot of that has been, there's been development in a variety of sectors, but I think that so much of that has been development in sort of the non-manufacturing industrial base. Like we had that, and we still have a great base for that here. It's some of the other things that contribute more to the vibrancy of the community, your quality of life, things that residents and citizens can actively participate in. I think that's the thing that's really grown up over the last, I think the catalyst was really the eclipse for this community, and I think that there were enough folks here in town who are ready to take that opportunity and turn it into, milk it for all it was worth, and really, take that and use it as a way to propel our development. And so,
and you're referring to the solar eclipse.
Yeah, 2017. Right?
Yeah.
And so I think that really was a turning point. It was that little extra boost that some folks needed to be like, let's make this happen. And open this restaurant, or we built the plaza downtown, David Street Station, and so many of those things kind of happened right around that same kind of 2-3 year period, which I think was that sort of critical mass of momentum that was needed so that others were like, okay, I can see it happening, I can feel it happening, now's the time. That was part of what compelled us to move downtown. When we first opened, there wasn't as much vibrancy down here as there is today, and so it was like, well, we could go down there, but also we'll just start out where we're at, and there's not a compelling reason necessarily to be downtown at that time. And, as we went through first few years of business, so much changed down here that it's like, now is the time that we want to be downtown, because there's enough stuff going on down there. There's enough people putting effort and energy down there that it's created that critical mass that, now I want to be a part of that and help make sure that sustains.
Yeah. Because, a stable downtown, a vibrant downtown is a stable economy. And that's ultimately what we're looking for on this sort of search for economic diversification, where in the last century or so, we have had this boom and bust looming economy behind us.
Yeah.
And now you're saying, from your perspective in Casper, this is what a stabilized, sustainable economy starts to look like. It's vibrancy in our downtowns. It's startups such as Backwards Distilling. It's you as a founder. And I think part of that also comes into play, or an element of all of this comes into play when you start this relationship, this interaction between the public sector and the private sector, which we've talked so far in the context of the private sector.
Yep.
A small business owner that's growing a brand, a founder, an entrepreneur, yourself growing up in Casper. But you're also a city council person.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
Yeah.
Tell me your experience.
So that I got into that aspect of things, started to develop an awareness of the importance of elected people, decision makers, policy makers, thought leaders. Right away, when we first started the business, we were immediately thrust into the political sector. I run a business that is a highly regulated industry, and Wyoming state statute dealt a little bit with our industry, but didn't hadn't really attended to it. It was just sort of an industry that didn't exist when most of the statute was written. And so it was a long process to say, like, well, we need this change in statute to be able to run a viable business here. Or if we want to see the distilling industry grow in Wyoming, we need X, Y, and Z that, we can see examples of around the country. Other states have modeled it this way, and that's working really well for the distillers in that state. Those sorts of conversations had to happen and are still happening, but a lot of progress has been made over the last decade or so. But that became a very big part of my job early on, is sort of that advocacy piece, that like analyzing the industry, really going to bat for the industry at the policy level to say, like, these are the doors that we need to have opened if we believe that growth in this industry is important for our communities. I believe it is. I think that distilleries that get breweries communities that get distilleries, that get breweries, that have these types of additions to their communities, that is a big piece of that vibrancy, and that creates that's a nexus downtown or wherever they end up to for people to go, creates a third space for them where they've got work, they've got home, and they've got a place that they're proud of, that they like to go, that they like to support. And so I do think they make a big impact beyond just sort of the tangible stuff in their communities, just in the image and the personality of the communities. And so I do think it's important, and it became clear that if that was true, then we needed to go advocate for that, to make sure that we could clear regulation that was creating a barrier in order to create a more prosperous industry. So that I was sort of thrust into that. I was not expecting that when we opened the distillery. I was like, I'm going to be the cocktail maker. Like, that's my part of the job. I'm gonna shake the drinks. I'm gonna make the recipes. Like, I love flavor. I love all that stuff. And it quickly evolved. Like, no, you're going to have to become savvy at advocacy and at working with legislators and having conversations with policymakers to do any of this that you want to do. And so that was my first awareness of how business and policy intersect, the private sector and the public sector intersect. And that happened really quickly. And so, from there, it just, became part of my job and something that I participated in regularly. And then, looking at my own community, I started to really have a strong belief that local government is extremely important as well, and arguably more important than, all the national politics that everybody spends so much time worrying about and thinking about. And then, so much of what happens at the local level just sort of gets overlooked. People aren't as keyed into that. And I kind of feel like local government is one of our last best bastions of cooperation and collaboration. And, I'm fortunate and by design ran for a nonpartisan body to sort of avoid so much of what I have seen, like partisanship create ineffective mechanisms for conversation and policy change. So, I'm in a nonpartisan body, which is great because we don't have that sort of barrier between us. We just can talk about the problem, think about solutions without having to put too many labels on it or anything like that. And
'cause, all politics are local, right?
Yeah.
And fortunately for your experience as a city council person, this wasn't your first rodeo when it comes to public service.
Yeah.
Talk to me about Engage.
Yeah. So that was a organization that I didn't found Engage. Engage was sort of founded as a response to Endow. So Endow was the previous governor's economic diversification initiative at the state level. And the question was posed, like, how come nobody, out of all the people around the state that you appointed to be on this board, how come nobody's under the age of 40?
Right, and so this is starting to get into the impediment part of our question. Plenty of opportunities with, if you have the gusto, if you have the drive, you can build a brand. There's a community that is very receptive, and to a certain extent, there are applicable resources that are fairly easy, within your grasp to find, to get, to help you level up as a founder, as an entrepreneur. Now we're switching gears into the impediments, which is a conversation we have to have as we move forward, right? So with Engage, right, you guys are asking that question, why are all the youth going elsewhere.
Yep.
Maybe we call it a brain drain. Maybe we call it a resource drain. Doesn't matter. But you guys are addressing that. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, we were trying to. It was this notion of, if we're going to talk about what the economy looks like in 20 years, the people who are going to be the primary drivers and participators in that economy, like, we've got to have some folks at the table who are under the age of 40. Everybody who's here now is going to be retired in 20 years or thereabouts, So we're missing out on including the perspective of the folks who are going to be at the helm of that economy. And the question was why. And fortunately, that was met with support from the governor. He's like, yeah, that's a great point. Let's get somebody on there. And they earmarked a seat, and I ended up taking that seat and being the liaison between Engage and Endow. And that evolved, and Endow sort of, what do I want to say, sunsetted. Sunset. And but Engage continued on. I mean, Engage was not developed at the behest of any government entity. It was a grassroots group that just got together and said, this is an important question for Wyoming. We need to identify what is happening, why folks are leaving, and not coming back, and why we have trouble attracting younger folks here. If we do want a strong and vibrant economy in 20 years, we need the people who are going to be shepherding that, into the future.
And what are those conclusions?
Well,
why are they leaving? Why can't we attract?
I think there's a number of them. When it comes down to it, we heard most often that it was opportunity for careers in industries that are not heavily represented here. So not everybody wants to work oil and gas, right? So that was a primary factor. It's like, I want to be able to find a job in my field, and my field is not really here or not represented here. So folks leave for that reason. I think there's some cultural reasons why people leave here. They don't feel invited in. They don't feel welcome necessarily, right? And so then they're like, well, I'm going to go make my own way somewhere else. I kept coming around so often to the importance of inviting people to not just a broad, we want you here, but like specifically, like, we want you here, and here's why it's important to us that you're here, and what can we do to make that happen. And so sort of that next commitment to young folks to say, like, we want you here, and we're showing you how we want you here. We're not just saying that we want you here. And so, after years and years of sort of study of that issue, we identified a few things. There are some other smaller things, like apprenticeship opportunities, mentorship opportunities, like some of those things that would be like tangible. Like, if this person had found this opportunity, they may have been able to chart their career course here in the state. A
connection issue in that regard.
Yeah, some sort of connection, some sort of network, some sort of soft handoff from, like, you're done with whatever, schooling, training you're going to get, and here's how we're going to make sure that, you transition into that next phase for you. And so that there seems to be a gap there.
Which is curious, because there's a lot of resources, a lot of, maybe some would describe as siloing.
Yes.
Of resources. So maybe a just general prescription in regards to this is look at that.
Yeah.
And look at that soft handoff that you talk about.
It's connection. That was one of the primary sort of goals that developed from that group over time, is the idea of connection, the idea of making sure that there are stepping stones, there are clear pathways that are sort of carved out to get where you need to get, and there's something like a single point of entry or some sort of funnel that's helping, guide and direct people to get to the things that do exist, and the framework that is there to help them with that next thing. But I think we lose people in the missed connections. And I think that that's something you hear about in Wyoming all the time too, is also the concept of isolation, which is like maybe the opposite of connection, right? And I think that plagues us across the board in a variety, and it has a variety of, outcomes that are undesirable, that are created by that isolation. And this is probably one of them.
What do we do? What do we do about it?
Well, it's difficult, right? I mean, it is really difficult. I think it will take a concerted strategy and commitment to a strategy. I think that talking about it in generalizations will not get us there. I think a lot of people know it. People who are working in these agencies, they understand the siloing. They understand the lack of connection. And after all my years in the various rooms that I've been in talking about the same thing, I haven't yet seen a plan put into place to say, like, let's build a strategy around how we increase this connection, like a holistic plan, right? I think that there are plans, like there are good plans that have been developed over time that have had a lot of very smart people, very thoughtful people working on them. So, some of this exists, a lot of this information exists. It's this, like, who's going to connect the dots and create a strategy, put it in place. And I think ultimately, like, some of that is probably going to take some sort of programming, something that creates a line item on the budget. And I think there's a lot of reticence to commit to it at that level, still at this point. And I think that that's where maybe, like, on the policy, the public sector front, that we're struggling. I think that there have been a lot of efforts on the private sector side of things to increase access to capital, to start to, as we discuss that issue, that entrepreneurs here, like, may not have the same opportunities that they would have if they were in larger metropolitan area or different parts of the country. I think that is something that I've seen some progress on, that's being driven by the private sector, and I think that is making a difference. Like, that is making an impact. I think that there is some public sector work that needs to happen to really kind of round that out and give it the boost and the support that it needs. Yeah.
So maybe we ought to start searching around in Cheyenne.
Yeah. Right. I mean, it's Cheyenne. It's at the local level. It's there's, if this is important, like, we want to get people in decision-making positions that believe it's important and understand that it's important and can put some action behind the words that we say, like, this is important to us. We want our kids to have opportunity here. Mm-hmm. And if that's true, which I think most people want that, then how? Like, what is the plan to make that a reality?
Yeah. Okay. So, grew up in Casper.
Yeah.
Have a very successful brand. Make a hell of a cocktail.
Thanks.
Public service.
Yeah.
Why do you do what you do?
I have a deep, like, core commitment to my community. And I think that has been a driving force in all of the decisions that have been made, and even a core reason why I wanted to start this company, because I felt like Casper deserved to have something that is unique, that is that is something that you might otherwise find in a larger place. I've always felt like Casper is sort of the smaller place that has some big city amenities, and that's part of what I love about it here. And so, it's like, to me, supporting that vision for Casper was important to me, and being a part of that is a very exciting prospect for me, saying, like, I did that thing. Like, this is something that I can put my stamp on and say, like, this was my contribution to that broader effort. And because community is at, like, the core of what I do, it is sort of a question of, like, okay, well, how do I continue to support the community that's supporting us, and how do I, because to me they're inextricably linked. Like, the success of our community will translate to success for our company, and if the community's not vibrant and not successful and not healthy, we're going to struggle in that landscape. And so, trying to be proactive about creating the landscape that I think is necessary for our business and the other businesses here to be successful was important to me. And so, not sitting on the sidelines of that conversation. And I think so many people do, and I understand why they do, because it's a lot of work and it's a lot of time. And you have so much time invested already in, your company or whatever, your family, all of these things, right? But to me, that's all the more reason, like, because you're investing all that time, like, you can't leave the rest of this to chance, right? You've got, if it's important to you that your family grows up in a great place, you can't leave that stuff to chance. If it's important to you that your business, is in a healthy landscape, you can't leave that to chance. I think it's all the more reason, if you are busy and you are committed to all of these other areas, like, this is an area that you can't forget. Public service, right? Whether that's elected, you don't have to run for office. There are so many ways to be involved and be proactive in public service. And I think that to me, that's my spiel every time somebody says, like, I just don't have time. I was like, you don't have time not to. You have to. Like, you've got to find what it is, what can you contribute, like what expertise can you bring to the table, and get in there, get in that position, because again, there are a lot of driver's seats in Wyoming. There are a lot of seats open at those tables, and we need to fill them with people who have a vested interest in seeing those things go in a particular direction.
We don't have time not to.
Yeah.
I love that takeaway. I love your holistic approach. And we're getting there.
Yeah. I mean, progress is being made all the time.
Yeah. So, Amber, thank you.
Sure.
For your insights, and thank you for all you do. And again, I love your tasting room.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to chat. And
everybody, come down.
Yeah.
We do a high five. Well, we do a ghost high five. Ready? Thank you so much, Amber.
Sure.
Be well. Backwards Distillery, Casper, Wyoming. Cheers.
Cheers.